There have been many epic fights in the history of boxing, but few fights have evoked as much emotion and passion as the fight between Dwight Qawi and Evander Holyfield. This fight was remembered not only for its intrigue and drama, but also for a spectacular hellish round that almost cost Holyfield his life. After all, that evening he not only lost 15 pounds of weight, but the back pain that he experienced turned out to be not only muscular, but also renal. His kidneys failed. Today, I propose to talk about this brutal confrontation, which became the foundation on which the rest of the career of a great fighter was built. Evander Holyfield was one of the top hopes for the American team at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. He confidently passed 3 stages.
Good punch. Perfect, right.
In the semifinals, he was opposed by New Zealander Kevin Barry. The duel turned out to be dirty. In the second round, Evander knocked out Kevin with a left hook.
Disqualification. Oh, he's got it.
However, at the moment of impact, the referee's command sounded. After a long trial, Holyfield was disqualified and received a bronze medal. This moment only strengthened the boxer's desire to prove his worth in the professional ring. On November 15, 1984, Evander, along with fellow U.S. Olympic teammates Pernell Whitaker, Virgil Hill, Mark Breland, Meldrick Taylor, Tyrell Biggs, made his professional boxing debut. Holyfield was rapidly gaining momentum. For 11 fights, he reached the status of a contender for the title, and his opponent was a former prisoner, WBA world champion Dwight Qawi. Before the bout, there were those who wondered if 23-year-old Holyfield had bitten off more than he could chew by agreeing to fight 33-year-old Qawi, who had breathed new life into his career after winning the title in the second division. Qawi had a huge advantage over Holyfield in the experience of performing in the professional ring. Qawi dominated the light heavyweight division. He took revenge for the only loss in his career from Johnny Davis. He went past former champion Mike Rossman and the great James Scott in succession. In the title fight, he defeated Matthew Saad Muhammad and became the new WBC world champion. After 2 title defenses and a rematch with Matthew Saad Muhammad, Qawi entered the unification bout. His fight with Michael Spinks is considered one of the most significant fights in light heavyweight history. In the 8th round, Qawi was able to knock Spinks down, but Michael kept the fight under control and won by decision. Qawi pushed for a rematch but never got a second chance. In the mid-80s, a new weight category began to gain popularity: cruiserweight. Qawi moved to this division and soon became the world champion there.
Cruiserweight champion gets down. Good shots here by Qawi. Opens up again. Eventually,
in the first defense of the title, he dealt with Michael Spinks' brother Leon and partially avenged the Spinks family for losing the unification battle. However, most importantly, Qawi fought 9 fights in 10 rounds and boxed 3 times from 11 to 15 in rounds. This was in stark contrast to Holyfield, whose longest bout was 8 rounds against Tyrone Booz in July 1985. Holyfield now faced a real opportunity to go 15 rounds against a resilient, hardy, and determined world champion. At that time, Holyfield was not famous for his endurance as later. In 1986, stamina was a very serious problem for him. Holyfield snorted and puffed at times during his pro debut against Lionel Byarm, a fight that lasted the full 6 rounds. This negatively affected the quality of further battles. In order to get Holyfield through 15 tough rounds, trainers Duva and Benton, along with fitness specialist Tim Hallmark, developed a comprehensive plan to increase his endurance. The first step was to rethink Holyfield's diet, which had previously included his favorite hamburgers, chips, popcorn, hot dogs, strawberry smoothies, apple pies, and crackers. They have been replaced with healthier foods such as apples, oranges, bananas, and lean meats. The second phase was Hallmark's workout regimen, which included treadmills, stationary bikes, and long workouts that turned Holyfield's already impressive physique into a masterpiece. In addition, the trainers used a clever little trick by telling Holyfield that his 2-minute and 2.5-minute rounds were actually 3 minutes long. But the hour Holyfield spent against Qawi was not easy. It was one of the most intense and energy-consuming fights in history. The fight started at a high pace. After the gong announced the start of the fight, the differences between the fighters became even more obvious. The tall challenger sought to fully use his advantage at a distance, while the fearsome champion pursued him, covering up in defense and trying to find the right moment to deliver a strike with his right overhand punch. The exploration period lasted less than a minute, after which Holyfield began to try to get the opponent with his right after a double jab, while Qawi patiently wiggled his upper body, taking jabs with gloves, hitting the challenger's head and body, and patiently waiting for Holyfield to waste his strength and energy. Holyfield displayed excellent hand speed and footwork while delivering combinations. However, Qawi's precise counterpunch to the jaw reminded the contender that he was facing a very experienced and very smart opponent. Qawi started the second stint with a strong right to the jaw, and, tellingly, Holyfield calmly took it and continued to hit the champion. Tellingly, Qawi has already reduced the distance between them by half, exactly as much as he needed to demonstrate his strengths. Qawi with a sharp left hook and a right uppercut to the jaw deftly moved Holyfield to the ropes again and again. As long as things were going well for him, the pace was increasing, which increased the likelihood of Holyfield burning out in championship rounds 11 through 15 or even earlier. Intensity was increasing with every passing second, and the fighters even continued to fight after the bell signaling the end of the second round sounded, a bell that was barely audible over the noise of the crowd. During the beginning of the third round, Holyfield attempted to end the fight early, but Qawi calmly evaded most of the strikes and, after a short pause, resumed his determined pursuit. Many of his body shots hit low, prompting referee Vinny Reynan to warn Qawi repeatedly, but his overhand punches were accurate and seemed more powerful, at least at that moment. Holyfield agreed to engage in positional warfare with Qawi. However, the main difference between them at this stage was the intensity of their work. Holyfield was constantly in motion, using his hands and feet, while Qawi was boxing at an uneven pace. If it had been a 3-round amateur fight, Holyfield would have won by the end of the third stint. But now he had to complete 4 more such fights in a row in the burning heat and against an opponent armed with ingenuity, stamina, and endurance. The fourth round began with Holyfield starting to wonder how he would get through 15 rounds. He retreated to the ropes and allowed Qawi to attack from close range for almost a full minute. When Duva yelled, turn him," Holyfield moved to the center of the ring and bombarded Qawi with light but accurate punches. The intensity of these strikes increased as the round went on, but in the long run, Qawi was getting the trench warfare he craved. Qawi delivered a heavy right punch that for the first time in the entire fight knocked off Holyfield's balance, but he responded perfectly by immediately counterattacking with powerful blows. Holyfield started the 5th round on tiptoe, trying to slow down the pace of the fight to a more comfortable level. Qawi, sensing the weakness of his opponent, began to psychologically dominate, mocking and making faces. Qawi showed the best result in the 5th round, which cannot be said about Holyfield, as his body and mind began to fail him. In retrospect, Rounds 6 through 8 were the most important 9 minutes of Evander Holyfield's boxing life because the successful resolution of his doubts served as the foundation on which the rest of the great fighter's career was built. If he chose to give up, he would have to live with the consequences for the rest of his life. It would have been his first professional defeat. He would have lost untold tens of millions of potential future earnings and probably would have fallen into obscurity. He displayed champion spirit and proved to himself that he could handle extreme pressure. His body was losing fluid at a dangerous rate, but Holyfield was able to hold on thanks to his mental strength, which allowed him to put on the best performance of his life. And Qawi, being a proud champion, made Holyfield reflect on his game and answer these questions. In the 9th round, Holyfield finally found the perfect distance where he could hit with maximum efficiency while limiting Qawi's punching ability. He consistently jabbed hard, pushing Qawi off and throwing short right uppercuts and hooks without getting an adequate response. At the beginning of the 10th round, Holyfield increased his advantage when his legs suddenly came to life and his punches became faster and stronger. His long-awaited second wind caught up with him, and as he approached the finish line, he felt more and more euphoric and relieved. However, Holyfield understood that he was not boxing in a vacuum. Qawi was still a real Qawi, a threat with his steely will, strong chin, and drive to win. Holyfield continued to test his physical abilities, and a crowd of thousands of people who filled the arena tried to cheer up the challenger, chanting "Holy." And then the hellish 13th round came. During the break, Lou Duva advised Evander to develop his attacks. Do not invest and beat serially. The fight immediately moved to close range. The champion pressed, resting his left shoulder on the opponent. Holyfield found a moment, closed the distance, and began to attack Dwight hard, delivering strong blows with his arm bent at the elbow. He landed a total of 4 combinations, each consisting of more than 4 punches. Qawi withstood all the attacks and repelled the opponent with his unique combination of strikes, a long left from the side and a straight right. Evander tried to keep him at a distance, but each time the champion successfully approached and delivered blows. It is important to note that Qawi never moved forward without throwing punches. The first punches were aimed at the air, and he always followed up with a second series to hook the opponent. This brought him success. In the final moments of the round, Holyfield managed to break the distance again and land an accurate series of punches. The round ended to a roaring applause from the crowd. Holyfield won the 13th segment, which became decisive in the entire fight. The next 2 rounds were held in an equal double-edged fight. The opinions of the judges were divided. One counted in favor of Qawi, 143 to 141. And the other 2 counted in favor of Holyfield, 144 to 140 and 147 to 138. Evander became the new WBA cruiserweight champion of the world. It was the first title in his career. Athletes often use cliches to say that they are ready to give everything for victory, but for Holyfield it was the literal truth. During the fight, he lost 15 pounds and suffered back pain that turned out to be not only muscular, but also renal. His kidneys were failing. According to an article published in October 1990 in the Los Angeles Times, Holyfield was dangerously close to suffering serious consequences. His boxing career not only could have come to an end, but he also could have spent the rest of his life on a kidney dialysis machine. However, thanks to the prompt intervention of doctors and the support of his family, he was able to avoid these consequences.
And here we go. How many times he throws that overhand right hand and has not yet.
A year and a half later, the fighters had a rematch and Holyfield knocked out Qawi in the 4th round. He then became the only heavyweight in history to win 4 separate championship titles in a 26-year career that ended in 2011. He compiled a track record of 44 wins, 10 losses, and 2 draws. 29 wins were won by knockout. As for Qawi, he moved between heavyweight and cruiserweight division, and his last title opportunity came in November 1989 against Robert Daniels for the vacant WBA belt. The 34-year-old fighter lost by split decision. And although he ended his career losing 8 rounds to Tony La Rosa in November 1998 at a career-high 232 pounds, it was only the 3rd loss in his last 12 fights. He ended his career at the age of 45 with a record eerily similar to Holyfield's: 41 wins, 11 losses, 1 draw. 25 wins were won by knockout. Retiring 12 and a half years before Holyfield's final fight, he overtook the real deal in the Hall of Fame by 13 years after being inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2004.